What is up, fellow nerds, and welcome to Not Your Status Quo. Today we will be doing part 1 of our Theorypalooza on Marvel Phase 4.
It is the complete Phase 4. Things can move, things can change. We've been working on this for quite a while, and it's pretty set, but there are always changes possible.
And we would like to thank our sponsor, Sprite, for letting us film today from the Sprite Comic-Con Convention Center, Room B. So let's start with what we know. We know that Wanda is using the Darkhold and maybe hurt her children. Could have aligned to the finale of Loki when He Who Remains said, I no longer know what's going to happen. We have that. We had Monica Rambeau summoned to space. We assume to Nick Fury on that ship from Far From Home. We know that the power broker, Sharon Carter, Skrull, we know she is back with the CIA. And we know, finally, Kang has arrived. And it has basically burst open the multiverse.
Well, Kang hasn't arrived. He's always been there. We just
and
didn't
always
see
will
him.
be there.
We just didn't see him.
And also, I think you forgot to mention one of the most important parts of Wanda. The fact that, obviously, some sort of time travel, multiverse shenanigans happened at the last episode of WandaVision, too, because it altered the mountains and the trees where she was at. So, you know, very important to mention.
Very important. And just so you know, that thing floating down towards the thing was not White Vision. It was an editing malfunction, so we won't read into that too much. But that scene will come...
Mephisto.
Is it? Mephisto.
No, it is not.
Mephisto.
He wasn't ready. He can take on other shapes. If you watch some of our older videos on Theorypalooza on Phase 4, you know, we've been talking for a long time that it's going to be kind of cosmic, it's going to be kind of grounded, and there's going to be a lot going on. And I think we've already seen that happening. We see Wanda, you know, using magic with the Darkhold, becoming stronger in magic, and, you know, being able to create life from nothing. I mean, that's pretty huge. And then we get kind of the Captain America and the Winter Soldier, you know, we get a new Cap, and then we get Sharon Carter, whoever she is going to sell these new weapons she has access to, probably going to be more grounded. I don't think it's going to be, you know, any cosmic entities. And then we also have Kang arriving, and he can play into both parts, and we'll kind of get into that later.
In the background, don't forget, we also have Valentina D'Allegro.
That's Margaret Woolworth Carrington von Schumacher Chanel Astor Livingston Comte de Saint-Exupéry Mountbatten Windsor Armand.
Call me Val, but don't call me Val. Just keep it in your head.
We've got her kind of, you know, forming her Thunderbolts or Evil Avengers or whatever it is that she's doing, sort of kind of replicating in a way like what Nick Fury did in the original Phase 1 when he was putting together the Avengers. She's sort of gathering up these people, getting her evil Captain America, gathering her potentially, you know, conflicted Black Widow. So we'll have to see where that goes.
And then we also have to remember, if you watch our little quick hit on the fighting tournament from Shang-Chi, the Abomination shows up.
Mm-hmm.
Who would be a great stand-in for the Hulk in these Dark Avengers / Thunderbolts?
Abomination.
So I don't think it's a coincidence that he is showing up in Shang-Chi. I do think that the more grounded level is going to be Val and her Dark Avengers. And how is that going to play up? I think we're going to continue to see her recruiting people up until she gets his team formed and have their first mission together, where they're going to go out and probably be a lot like the Thunderbolts in the comics. Hey, the Avengers are gone. You know, Captain Rogers is gone, Iron Man has passed away, Black Widow is gone, but here's this new team to keep everybody safe. And it's going to look enough like the old team that people are going to buy into it a little easier because of it.
I'd buy that for $1.
Are we going to get a Red Hulk?
I do think we are going to get a Red Hulk at some point. If we don't get it in the She-Hulk series on Disney+, we are going to get it in either an Avengers movie or a Thunderbolts movie down the road, or a Disney+ series. You know, I'm sure there's a lot of stuff that have not been announced yet that we're getting.
Things can move, things can change.
You know, out of that, we may even get an alternate form of Civil War. So if you think about it, if we've got these, you know, sort of Dark Avengers, but they're a little bit more trusted, you know, because they've got backing from the government or, what have you. But then let's say that we now have maybe the Young Avengers, and they're made up of Wanda Maximoff's, made up kids. People are going to be like, wait a minute, you mean Wanda the terrorist who held a town hostage? And then, maybe let's say that we get let's say that we get Iron Lad in there, and then, eventually we've got Kang as a villain. People are going to like, wait a minute, that's a variant of Kang in your new good superhero team? I don't trust any of these people.
The apple falls far from the tree.
Well, and that's how Kang could kind of play into this grounded aspect of the thing. The Young Avengers are going to form because we have seen, Speed and Wiccan in WandaVision. We've seen Kid Loki. We've seen Stature from Ant-Man and the Wasp in Avengers Endgame. Kate Bishop is coming in a Hawkeye series. Miss Marvel, who is more part of the Champions, and that could still be brought into a Young Avengers thing. So this team is already forming. And if you watched our Young Avengers Theorypalooza, we talked about it before, but that team is forming. And what better way to bring in this potential big bad in Kang and bring it into the more grounded level by bringing in Iron Lad and have him be, kind of like a Mortis, but not as old as a Mortis. He's a younger Kang who doesn't want to become Kang, kind of.
And I would love to see the introduction of some of that tech as well, because then we've got a little bit of like something kind of filling in the space where we used to have Tony Stark always upgrading his tech. Now we've got this futuristic 33rd century or whatever tech.
And I also think that could lead, if Iron Lad is introduced, he's probably going to play a part in the Armor War series. Because there's things we know about that. We know Ironheart's coming. So is she going to have access to Stark tech, or is she going to create it herself? We know the government has Stark tech because they had the War Machine armor, what became the Iron Patriot. But who now has access to government secrets? That's right. Sharon Carter now has access to it. And we know she was on the phone with somebody saying she now has all this new weapons to sell, basically.
Well, if we're to believe you, it's obviously her Skrull compatriots.
No, I don't think it's her Skrull compatriots. I don't think it's Val. I think it's the Ten Rings organization that we're going to see in Shang-Chi, because they might have... She's just trying to gather money and power. And if she's trying to do this on the Skrulls' behalf, who better than have one of the biggest criminal organizations in the world than the Ten Rings? They lost out on all their Stark tech they had from Iron Man once Tony stopped selling. And if they could get it in another avenue, they're going to pay top dollar for it. So this would bring in, we know in Secret Invasion, the Skrulls are infiltrating, everything. Criminal organizations, the government. So we have Sharon Carter, if she is a Skrull. She's in the CIA. And she could get her finger in Skrull buddies to infiltrate the Ten Rings, the Avengers, Thunderbolt Ross, everybody. And I think this is just the beginning. But I also think, because she has access to Stark tech, she will also play into Armor Wars. I think some of what is going to be sold is going to be Stark tech. And we're going to see James Rhodes, the variant James Rhodes, kind of come out and be like, okay, we have to wrangle this in. Tony's legacy is not having Stark technology be weapons. And that's what's going to start the Armor Wars, and Sharon Carter is going to be at the heart of it. So we talked a little bit about Shang-Chi, but then next we have the Eternals. And we know during their, wonderful trailer, they said they didn't interfere until now. So what has changed? They didn't feel Thanos was a big enough threat to interfere, but the multiverse breaking open could be.
I really hate the multiverse. And I hate it just because they could take away what you've already seen as canon.
They could, yeah. That is one thing that I'm afraid that they might end up doing, and I really hope that the MCU doesn't lean too heavily on this as like a bit of a scapegoat or something like that, where if somebody says, oh, well, that's not canon, well, that's not how that happened, well, that doesn't make sense with what happened in this movie. I hope the MCU isn't so quick to be like, oh, well, that's a different timeline, or that could be a different timeline.
All right, so imagine there are multiple versions of Earth. So all of these Earths occupy the same place in space, but they vibrate at a different frequency, so they can't see one another.
I am afraid that could happen here or there, but I hope it doesn't. Like when people were complaining about, oh, that's not how Nick Fury got his scar.
Kevin Feige did have, rules of the multiverse meeting with all of the directors and everybody.
Things can move, things can change.
So hopefully, they keep it in check a little bit, because it can get nuts. And then, it's even like with the Skrulls, with Secret Invasion in the comics. It's like, oh, this character, they've been a Skrull the last 20 years. Yeah. And so it wipes out everything they did, and it just, it can get messy and ugly. And I hope that Kevin Feige continues to do what he's always done and keep the story tight and make sure that everything makes sense for the most part. There's always going to be plot holes, but make it so at least they're not so glaring you can't enjoy,
Guys, it turns out Tony Stark's been alive all the time. That Iron Man was a Skrull. Yeah. Also in a different timeline.
Can't have that.
One thing that I did want to bring up, so you mentioned the Eternals and them waiting until now to actually intervene and to do something about this due to, Kang or these multiverse shenanigans being some sort of threat. I have to wonder, does that mean that there's a chance that Kang's own technology, his own power that he has with his time travel ability, does that mean that he could possibly surpass the Eternals as like a real threat, something that even they couldn't potentially stop?
I think not only just one Kang having that power, but because we know there's variant Kangs fighting to take over everything, them together are going to be a power that needs to be contained and stopped in some way. And I think they're going to see it as that. They don't want, the Kang, they don't want another multiversal war with the Kangs. And after the Eternals, we also have SpiderMan No Way Home and Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness coming out within a few months of each other. And, well, obviously, Doctor Strange is going to deal with the multiverse. But with a lot of the reports we're hearing about No Way Home, with Andrew Garfield, Tobey Maguire showing up, we know Alfred Molina and Jamie Foxx are going to be in the movie as Electro from The Amazing Spider-Man 2, which if you haven't seen that movie, my God, you are so lucky. And Alfred Molina from what I still think is the best Spider-Man movie, Spider-Man 2.
Doc Ock.
Yes. So the multiverse is coming to Spider-Man No Way Home, but it could also have that sort of grounded aspect to it because, Doc Ock and Electro, while powerful beings, aren't really, world-shattering, villains, but it's enough to start bringing that multiverse in and also see, what if we see Val's team show up here?
So where Spider-Man is kind of on his last breath, he's being beaten up, and all of a sudden somebody comes in and says, "Don't worry, little guy, we got it. Let the real heroes do the saving."
Or
they can't do that in the movie, though. It's a Spider-Man movie. You can't make the hero not the hero.
They could, and then J. Jonah Jameson would be like, finally, a real hero, not this terrible Spider-Man!
I think he's against all heroes, isn't he?
But I could see that being in the middle of the movie, where they step up and say, "Let us handle this, kid. We're the Avengers now." And they step in.
I am a former Captain America, after all.
That's right. Forget about what happened.
we don't talk about that.
But they could step in, and that could then start building up their reputation, because if the cameras are everywhere, phones are everywhere, so if they step in and say, "We got this," and they help Spider-Man save the city, that's building that rep. And I think Val is
Roosevelt, Von Trapp, Wickenham, Hearst, Montgomery, Rothschild, Johnson & Johnson, Twillsworth, Dolce & Gabbana.
smart enough to know when to insert her team if they're together already. I mean, U.S. Agent obviously came about 6 or 7 months before Far From Home. So the team has been forming, and obviously Yelena Belova has been a part of the team since before Infinity War.
And I'm sure he's had enough time to get on social media and repair his character, and I've learned a lot, and I've gone through rehab, and I've made donations to this charity that'll help people, and I'm a much better person because of it. And yeah, he really is, and we could use a good Captain America after all. I will not take up the title of Captain America. I will be U.S. Agent, and I'm ready to serve America once again.
Who is Val?
Von Zweiger, Second Montgomery, De La Roche, Geico, Vanderbilt, Lannister, Van Buren, Butterworth, How I Met Your Mother.
Working for, though. She's not working for herself. She
No.
is reporting upwards.
Oh, I think so.
So we know from our In Focus on Val, she's worked as Madam Hydra, she's worked for S.H.I.E.L.D., and she's worked for Leviathan. So we've already had S.H.I.E.L.D. and Hydra kind of in this. So I do think she's going to be an agent for Leviathan. And I think she's recruiting this team to kind of do their bidding in the United States. And look who she's taken. She got the U.S. agent, who, I don't want to say weak-minded, but he's pretty easily influenced. And then...
Questionable morals.
Very questionable morals. And then we get, Yelena Belova, who is also kind of at a bad state. Her mentor and sister has passed away, was killed by Hawkeye, according to Val. So she is kind of getting these people that she can manipulate well. And I think it's going to be for a foreign entity, which would be Leviathan in this case.
So once again, just kind of adding a little bit more to the grounded aspect that you were mentioning.
Yeah, because we're going to come to a point where the Avengers are going to have to fight on many fronts. They're going to have to fight the Dark Avengers, Thunderbolts, or whatever it is. They're going to have to deal with Kang in a certain manner. And I do think at some point in Phase 4, or early Phase 5, we're getting Galactus. He's not going to be a big bad for a phase, but he's going to be a big bad for a movie coming down.
Whoa. Keith, don't tell me that the ultimate big bad Cloud is coming back into Marvel films. I am deathly afraid of clouds.
Why? Why?
Well, the good news is he's going to be another purple-colored villain.
Oh, thank God.
You know what the good news is? We're getting Silver Surfer with him. Of course we're going to get that.
Okay.
But when you say that, it's got to be, I would think, in a Fantastic Four movie.
I definitely think it'll be in a Fantastic Four movie. But we may have hints of him elsewhere. If we get a Nova show or a Nova movie, which they've talked about, they could show him. I always thought it would be detrimental to the character of Galactus if he just shows up outside of Earth and he's defeated. They need to show him destroying a planet. They need Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, which I don't think he'll show up in because I think James Gunn has his own script, and I don't think it's going to have anything like that. But I do think it could be a Nova movie, or it could be some other cosmic movie that they're working on that we haven't heard about yet. It could even be, Skrulls' Secret Invasion. Could you imagine if Secret Invasion starts with the planet that the Skrulls are now kind of inhabiting, gets eaten by Galactus?
And now they're trying to find somewhere else to go.
They're scattered all over the universe,
Yeah.
and they come here to Earth.
They
That
say,
would
hey, we know there's Skrulls on Earth that are doing well. Let's go there.
That would be a good reason for there to be two different versions of the Skrulls. One that, have been living on Earth since the 90s and are kind of used to the way things are and working with Nick Fury. And then these new Skrulls coming in, thinking, hey, you know what? We're not going to work for these Earthlings. We're better than them. We're going to just kind of take shit over.
There are 26 billion Skrulls, according to the comics, scattered all over the universe. So, for us to think that we know that they're all good would be wrong. Well, I think that's a poor assumption. I mean, the Kree have a problem with them for a reason.
And they have a problem with the Kree for a reason.
Yeah.
I think
The
these
Kree
two
are
races
a
are...
little bit racist.
Well, but I think both the Kree and the Skrull both want to conquer territories.
Mm-hmm.
And that ever bodes well for the people being conquered. They may think they're in the right, which I think Marvel does very well with villains. The Kree always think they're right. They think conquering these planets are bringing them peace and, food and all of these other things that they need. The Skrulls are the same way, so of course they're going to butt heads. But you're right. If we do find out that, Galactus destroys this world where a bunch of Skrulls have settled, they may not be as nice as the ones working with Nick Fury and everybody else. And that's where the issue with Secret Invasion could take place. They need a world. This one's pretty nice. That's what we think is going to happen in Phase 4 of the MCM, the Marvel Cinematic Multiverse. But what do you guys think? Add us at Twitter, leave it in the comments below, and we will see you next time at Not Your Status Quo.